Good morning, everyone. I'm Bree, and I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce you to a concept that I find very inspiring and valuable when considering managing water resources. I will be talking about this from the perspective of Canada, but it's applicable everywhere. To set the stage for this concept, I'm going to talk about the Canadian perspective on water. So, the Canadian general public has some contradictory views on water. On one hand, a majority of Canadians polled ranked water as the resource most important for Canada's future. But on the other hand, Canadians seem unfamiliar with their water resources. We use more water per person than almost anyone else in the world, and 1 in 4 Canadians don't know whether which water body serves as their drinking water source. Then there's the conflicting media reports. In the past, particularly, Canadians were led to believe that we have an overabundance of fresh water, and although it is true that Canada is water wealthy, there are sustainable supply limits. Now, the media and public discussion focuses on water quality and pollution. Canadians are very concerned about pollution in the water. The huge petition surrounding the Montreal sewage dump last year demonstrates this. That event also draws attention to the fact that Canadian public has no idea that raw or minimally treated sewage is dumped in waterways in Canada all the time. These contradictory perspectives actually fit very well in the broader modern and Western perspective on water. Generally speaking, in modern society, we have studied water so much to understand it that we end up reducing it to its functions and components and separating it from ourselves spiritually and physically through supply and sewage pipes. We are all very familiar with the hydrological cycle. It is very important for everyone to know that this is how water moves, but some scholars think that there is something important missing from this picture: the human influence. This is the idea of the hydrosocial cycle, also called the socio-hydrological cycle, or various other names. This addresses the need to include the human aspect in the big picture of global water cycling. After all, water no longer flows by the force of gravity, but now it flows to the people with the money to divert it. The concept of the hydrosocial cycle can be taken one step further. This one step further is having a water-centric perspective, or thinking like a watershed. These ideas were introduced to me through a course by Dr. Karen Bacher, and I think that they are key to good water resource management. The idea of thinking like a watershed is that as water naturally travels through the watershed, it serves many purposes and is reused many times. There is no waste in a natural system, so any natural waste products are reused as the resource by other organisms. If our human communities are going to be sustainable in terms of water quantity and quality, we need to design our communities and industries like a watershed. Here are some examples of in-place Canadian practical applications of thinking like a watershed. The Centre for Interactive Research and Sustainability on UBC campus is an example of the small scale of thinking like a watershed. The Sears building is designed to capture rainwater, reuse the water within the building multiple times, and biologically treat the water. The community scale, the False Creek Neighborhood Energy Utility, is an example of recapturing the heat from wastewater. The facility uses heat energy transfer to collect the waste heat from the wastewater leaving the neighborhood and transfer it back to the houses to supplement their home heating. Some other examples of community scale water-centric developments are separated sewer systems, bioswales or other stormwater management, and daylighting streams, which means getting urban creeks and streams out of underground culverts to make them healthier, and so they act as neighborhood recreation areas. It is also important for industry to think like a watershed. Just one example here is for wastewater from production or extraction to be completely treated before discharge. This Canadian company, BiotechQ, Environmental Technologies Incorporated, markets wastewater treatment facilities to mining companies. Their technologies remove and recover certain metals from the wastewater. In conclusion, we can see that the Canadian public perspective on our fresh water is conflicted, but I feel that there is a growing push for much better water management, and with more public education and inspiring examples like the ones I've mentioned, I'm convinced that Canadians will enthusiastically switch perspectives and start thinking like a watershed. And hopefully my course mates in IWRM program will as well. Thank you all very much for listening. You'll see I'll accept any questions or comments you have, and my sources are coming.